This is a mini John Cooper Works Anniversary Edition. I'm John Marcar, and I'm concerned that I'm starting to get a little bit old. Welcome to our latest video. Last week, I took delivery of this, Mini's latest little pocket rocket John Cooper Works. This one though is extra special because it's the anniversary edition, depicted by these lovely colours and numbers. 74 on here depicts the same number that John Cooper used to run on his racing car. It's a limited production, only 740 of these made worldwide, but it is just a John Cooper Works underneath. So that is what we'll be focusing on. This anniversary edition comes in the exact colour I'd want a John Cooper Works to be. It's called Rebel Green, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. There are other colour options available, but you do have to pay for them. Any other colour, £525. Unless you want black, that's £750. There are some other spec options you can choose, namely bonnet stripes, if you want those, that's £150. You can also get what's called a multicoloured roof. That will cost you £650. But there is also one non-cost option, and that's the mirror caps. White, red or black, you choose, no cost. There is another possibility of changing an option, and that is the wheels. Let's go and have a quick chat about those. There are two different wheel options for the John Cooper Works. One as a 17-inch, which is all black, or for an extra £700, you can have this style here and grow by an inch. A word of advice though, and that's road test both. And here's why. Oh my God! At the risk of sounding dramatic, I honestly think this has got to be one of the noisiest cars I've ever driven for road noise. And again, it's all thanks to those tiny little low-profile tyres. And they're run flats as well, which amplifies the noise even more. But here's the thing, the noise, it's not even the worst bit. It's how they look. I mean, I'm sorry, Mini, but did you let wheel and tyres be designed by an intern that has just discovered tyre stretch from 2016? And I know that car manufacturers have to be careful with stance and wheel placement, but the gap between the face of the wheel and the arch, well that's just ridiculous. Interior-wise, this is quite a pleasant place to be. The driving position's really good, the steering wheel feels great, seats are comfortable, I've got gadgets like heated seats, all the creature comforts that I'd want, fantastic stereo, thanks to the upgraded Harman Kardon sound systems. The back seats are a bit of a gimmick, they're not really usable unless you, as the driver, have tiny legs, and so does your rear passengers, but by the by, if you're looking at buying a Mini to accommodate a big dog and loads of luggage, then you're probably going to want to look at other models in the range. Now, there is one thing about the drive of the John Cooper Works that I feel I do need to address, and it's quite a major one. It's this, the gearbox. I have here a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it's brilliant. Really, genuinely, this is a fantastic gearbox. The gear ratios match the engine perfectly. The pedal position's great, clutch isn't too heavy, it's not too light. I can heel and toe with ease and comfort. The throw is great, the gear stick being quite high up, it's just in the perfect position for your hand. Everything about it, everything about the gearbox is absolutely brilliant. And therein lies the problem, because you can't have one. Mini, just like lots of other car manufacturers at the moment, is having an issue with semiconductors. There's a big shortage. I don't need to go into details. Chances are, if you're watching this, you already know everything you need to know about it. But as a result, it means that they're no longer, for the short term at least, putting manual gearboxes into their cars. If you go onto the Mini configurator right now and try and spec yourself a Mini,
you will not be able to find one with a manual box. I don't understand the technicalities of that, because me, as a mere mortal, would think that surely having a clutch pedal and a manual gearbox would require less semiconductors than an automatic paddle shift box, but apparently not. Now, there is another genuine one or two other gripes that I have with this car, and that involves putting the car into sport mode. Now again, that might just be something to do with me getting older. 2 days before filming this, I turned to the ripe old age of 35. Yeah, you might not believe it, but it's absolutely true. Despite my youthful haircut and not many wrinkles, I am getting older. And with that, I've noticed a few other changes. In fact, on the approach to my 35th birthday, I've discovered things like I can no longer eat 20 McNuggets without putting on 5 kilos immediately. I've definitely got quite a few grey hairs coming through, and, well, I've started making weird noises when getting in and out of cars. The other thing I've noticed is that I'm not as tolerant as I used to be with firm suspension. And in sport mode, in a John Cooper Works, firm suspension is firm. To demonstrate this, I will now go onto one of my favourite road testing roads in Warwickshire to show you just how bumpy this thing is. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's quite good fun, but it does get tiresome. I drive this road a lot, and I've driven it in all sorts of cars, everything from Land Rover Defenders through to SF90 Ferraris. But I have to say, the ride in this thing is quite remarkable. Me being me, I want to get the most from any car that I drive. So if a car has sport mode, then I'm going to put it into sport mode. I want to experience what the car can do at its best. But sport mode in the Mini John Cooper Works is, well, it's a bit daft. It's no secret that Mini is part of the BMW family, and with other models in the BMW family, you have the luxury of customising the different driver modes. So you can put your car into Sport or Sport Plus mode, but you can configure the individual elements of the car to make it ride and handle how you want it to ride and handle. In this, though, I can't do that. Mini do not give you the option to customise the Sport mode or any individual driving modes, and that, well, that seems a bit strange. Another annoying gripe that I have about John Cooper Works' sport mode is, well, it's that habit that so many other car manufacturers are also guilty of, and that is plumbing in synthetic car sounds. For example, I don't know who this appeals to. I still haven't worked it out, but clearly people like it because all the car manufacturers are now putting it into their cars. But again, just like with the configuration of the ride, I can't customize it. I can't turn it off. I've looked through all of the settings in all of the driver modes, and there is just no way that I can turn it off. If I click the car into green mode, its kind of eco-friendly version, and do the same acceleration, that's the real sound. Back into sport. It's just daft. The annoying thing is, the car doesn't actually sound that bad as standard. The exhaust tone is good, it's not too shouty, it just fits with the car. The forced induction noise as well with the car is really good. It's got turbo whooshes and whistles and little bits of chatter. Why not just give us more of the real stuff? Why do we have to have this bizarre plumbed in noise?
It's a nice thing, this John Cooper Works, but I'm not really sure it's me. I feel like the Mini I needs to be a bit more subdued. Not slow, but just with no silly settings to coax me into silly fake noises or super firm suspension. I feel like the Mini I need is one of those. Welcome to the Mini E, Mini's attempt at the small EV city car market. And you know what? First impressions tell me they've done a pretty good job. So here it is. Now, size-wise, absolutely nothing separates the E with the John Cooper Works we've been driving. In fact, dimensions in length, in width, in height, it's all exactly the same. There's nothing to tell the two apart really from a distance. We even have a confusingly non-functional bonnet vent, which is also about as functional as the bonnet vent on the John Cooper Works, and an S badge. So from a glance, you might think, well, that's just another petrol-powered Mini. But of course, it's not. Inside, it's much the same. In fact, the interior trim, you can barely tell the difference, other than a couple of little subtle tweaks, which I'll show you now. So in here, it's the same story. Everything looks the same, it's very familiar. I have the same instrument clusters, the same center console. The only subtle things to give things away are, of course, the two pedals. But here's the thing, you actually only need one of those. I'll get to that in a bit. And of course, the gearbox. Being an electric car, we only have one gear needed to propel us forward, and that's all controlled through the gear stick. But again, it's all in a familiar same place. There is one very slight difference from the John Cooper Works we've been driving and the Mini E, and that is the positioning of the driver. We are just very, very, very slightly higher, and the only reason for that is, of course, because of the need to accommodate the batteries. And that's really clever. What Mini have done is, rather than sacrificing space in the back of the car, like taking out rear seats or making the boot smaller, they've engineered the batteries to fit really deep within the chassis. It almost looks like a big T-bar that goes right underneath where the fuel tank would be and carries forward to where the gearbox would be. That's very clever because, of course, they've saved space, but they've also lowered the centre of gravity, meaning this thing still drives really well. There is one styling cue actually that does depict the difference between the Mini E and the John Cooper Works, and it's these wheels. And I'm sorry to say, a bit like the wheels on the John Cooper Works, I think those are horrible. There are other wheel options available, and those that don't give you the "look at me, I'm driving an electric car" aesthetic. I get the point in them. I just personally don't think they're very nice. But let's talk about the range. Now, being a small car with cleverly compacted batteries, you're probably not going to be surprised to learn that we're not rivaling the 300-mile range big EV SUVs. But at 130 to 145-ish miles, it'll get you far enough. Central London to central Bristol, for example, is 121 miles. And how often are you needing to do a journey as long as that, non-stop, in your small city car? Being on the small side as an EV, well, that actually has its perks too, because of course it means that charging doesn't take quite as long as it does on the big stuff. Find a 50 kilowatt fast charger at a local motorway service station, and you can charge this thing from near empty to 80% in just half an hour. If you're charging it at home with an overnight charge on a reduced overnight electricity rate, then a charge from 0 to 100% is going to cost you somewhere between £5 and £10. And I can't remember the last time I paid £5 for petrol and was rewarded with 140 miles of range. Now, anyone thinking or hoping perhaps that by buying a Mini E you might get a little more storage, perhaps a frunk, for example, well, you're going to be disappointed. But let's let Mini off, because they've actually been very clever. If we open up the bonnet and carefully remove this cover, which I have previously removed, we will see that the entire front end of the car is occupied by the electric motor, the motor that powers the two front wheels. And when you see the detail of this, and then remember that this is a car that is in no way bigger than the John Cooper Works we've been driving. They've managed to fit, Mini have managed to fit all of this technology, all of this hardware into the car without changing the dimensions of it at all. It's actually quite an impressive thing. And for that reason, I forgive them for no frunk.
Unlike in the petrol and diesel model Minis, the Mini E comes with just one power option. It's a 32.6 kilowatt hour battery and an electric motor that powers the wheels up front. For now, that is the only power output and powertrain that Mini are putting into their E models, and to be honest with you, I think that's absolutely fine. If we convert it to the kind of terminology that we're used to, it works out to be around 181 brake horsepower. Now don't be put off by that one option only powertrain, because it's no slouch. That turbocharged John Cooper Works that we left behind, that thing was quick, 227 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time in 6.3 seconds. This thing, with 181 brake horsepower, is capable of getting from 0 to 60 just 1 second slower, 7.3 seconds. And it gets more impressive when you think about the weight difference of the car. Of course, this being an EV means that you're having to house really big, enormous batteries. And Mini have been very clever with their placement of them. They're buried deep within the chassis, which lowers the centre of gravity. But what it also does is, in the most extreme cases, adds up to 300 kilos in weight, in addition to the petrol and diesel models. So what about the price? Well, if we take a direct comparison, i.e. this exact Mini E, and compare it with the exact John Cooper Works that we've just been driving, well, this is cheaper. It's just over £1,000 cheaper. Now, if you are looking to buy a Mini E, well, there are lots of additional tax breaks and benefits that you can look out for. Most car dealers will now be able to explain the benefits and how they work, and getting relief in certain tax brackets, that's always a welcome thing in the current climate. But if you are a company owner, or perhaps looking to buy some of these as a company car, then the benefits get even better. Honestly, go and have a chat with your accountant and thank me later. So what's it like to drive? Well, again, similarly, it's remarkably close to the John Cooper Works, despite, of course, it being a considerably heavier car. The battery placement where it is lowers the centre of gravity, which means that the car itself is still very, very fun and engaging to drive. And of course, being electric powered, you've got far much more direct acceleration. This thing is still really good fun. It still has the go-kart handling characteristics, and I'm not being thrown around in my seat with a really unusually and unnecessarily firm ride. This thing, it's exactly what I'd want the John Cooper Works to ride like. Still firm, but just not silly. Now, there are a few quirks and benefits that the Mini E brings which the John Cooper Works can't offer. And one of those things is called one-pedal driving. At first I thought that was going to be a bit of a gimmick when I first experienced it on BMW's little experimental i3, but in practice you actually find yourself using it quite a lot. I certainly do. Now, one-pedal driving, in case you're unaware, is the ability to effectively drive, accelerate with your accelerator pedal, as you would always expect, but rather than having to lift off the accelerator and hit the brake, you can simply lift off the throttle. And by lifting off the throttle, what happens is the car then goes into a regenerative mode. It takes kinetic energy from the car slowing down to put power back into the batteries. And it makes a difference. If you put this car into its green plus mode, it'll shut down all the accessories such as air conditioning and heated seats, and it will focus solely on what the car can make back, the power that it can put back into the batteries. Now, something has surprised me when comparing the two cars, and that is the fun factor. I was fully expecting that the Mini John Cooper Works would be my fun car. I thought I was going to get into that, drive it, and get out almost giggling because it's so silly and fast and whooshy and turbocharged and great. But you know what? I think I'm having more fun in here. The Mini in sport mode is no slouch. In fact, what I'm going to do is take advantage of this very straight 60 mph road, come to a stop, put it into Sport Plus,
accelerate. That is... It's a quick car. You can't deny that this is a quick car. There are other differences as well, subtle differences in the cabin here. The spec level between this and the John Cooper Works is different, I must admit. I don't have quite as good of an infotainment system, I don't have wireless car charging, I don't have that glorious Harman Kardon sound system, but you can, of course, get it all. This is what's called the Spec 2 in the Mini E range, and what Mini have done is they've put in different spec levels and trim levels, and with the different trims, the higher you go, obviously the higher the spec that you get. So if you go for the higher option, yes, you'll end up paying a little bit more, but you'll have all of the creature comforts that you'd have in the John Cooper Works as well. So, we've come to the point in our video where, well, I need to make a decision. Which is best? The John Cooper Works, petrol-powered, turbocharged, exciting go-kart Mini, or the electric E? Now, it might be my new ripe old age, it might be me just looking forward at a more economical side of life, it might be me just having had enough of ultra-firm rides. But the one I'm taking home, and the one that I'd choose out of the two, is this one here. I think the Mini E is all the Mini you'd ever need. Thank you so much for watching our latest video. Don't forget, you can see everything that we do and our entire back catalogue of previous videos on our website at drivenchat.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, please be so kind to subscribe and hit that little bell notification to find out when we upload our next video. And lastly, don't forget to check out our podcast. We are the Driven Chat podcast, available in all the usual podcast places, with a new episode coming out each week with a personality from the automotive world. For now, I'll say thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.